Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today is Kuumba, January the 10th, 2025. And although the new year is starting off really crazy around the world, we're going to add more fuel to the fire by our open forum discussion topic regarding the question, does spirit and or the soul exist? Again, this is an open forum, so this means you can join the panel and join in the discussion, and want to get your thoughts. So all that and more when we return in just a moment. And we are back. So how do I get rid of this thingy now? That they didn't change some things around. So we are here. I'll cut my camera on for a little bit because I'm in outer space today. Since we talking about spirit, we're gonna be in outer space today, right? So want to give a shout out to those who have made themselves known already in the chat. So peace and blessings to Sister Mika. Thank you for joining the conversation. And Melanated Goddess, peace and powers to you as well. Everything is everything in the building. Ain't seen you in a minute. And Infinite Minds is in the building. And so I know a lot is going on, especially in places like California. And, prayers and heart goes out to those who are affected by the fires. And, there's going to be a lot to unpack and a lot of work to do for those who have lost their homes or have had damage to their homes. I don't know the landscape of all of Los Angeles. So, maybe somebody can come in and chime in and give us some updates on exactly what is going on out there on the West Coast of the United States. And just let me adjust some things here. So, we got a new president coming soon. They're talking about banning TikTok. There's just a whole bunch of things going on in the universe. But today we are going to talk about spirit and what is spirit and the soul, and does it exist? So this is not a lecture from me. This is an open forum. So for those of you who want to join the conversation, because I want to hear from y'all what's on y'all mind in terms of when people say the word spirit and spiritual and the soul and etc. What comes to mind? What comes to your mind when these these words are spoken, whether you're using the English words, spirit or soul, or if you speak an indigenous African language, whatever terms that you use in your language. What do you mean when? So I might as well make a banner for that as well. Let me do that. So, what is spirit and or soul? So that is the open forum question, and or at least part one. So part two of that question is, regardless to how it is defined, does it exist? And we can add on, what evidence is there for the existence of spirit or the existence of soul? Is it something that somebody just made up in the universe? What was the purpose of it? If they did make it up. So if you want to join the chat, for those of you who are watching from YouTube, the link for the conversation is in the chat, and it may have scrolled up by now, but it should. Actually, I would actually have to, or did someone pin it already? I think someone pinned it. I'm not sure. Let me there. I forgot that, from the back end, just because I posted doesn't necessarily mean it's pinned, but it should be pinned right now, for those of you who want to join the panel. So until then, let me shout out a few more people who have made themselves known in the chat. We have Schneider Meinham, and I know I'm totally mispronouncing that, but please forgive me. But welcome to the forum. We also have Rakim777 in the building. And we got brother Chris in the building. Peace to you, good brother. And we have, I'm assuming that's Iconic Silverback. Peace and blessings to you and everyone in the chat. So again, so this is what I'll do. So hopefully this will spark the conversation, or encourage y'all to come on the panel. And you don't have to show your face. Just make sure that your mic is working and the like. That when you come on the panel. So the panel, excuse me, the link for the panel is on is pinned to the top of the screen. So what I'm going to do, let me go to YouTube real quick, and I'm going to share this video from Neil deGrasse Tyson, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, the well-known astrophysicist and scientific literacy or just science promoter, and educator, head of the New York Planetarium. And he was, I don't know how recent this was, but he was interviewed on Vlad TV. And so this is going to be about a 4-minute and 34-second clip. And so, if y'all don't want to just jump out there and give your definition of what a spirit is or a soul, then the I want to hear your response to Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. So again, the link is pinned to the top of the chat. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick. And we're going to go to the Chrome tab. There we go. Yep. So hopefully that y'all can see this. So I'm about to play it now. Y'all let me know if y'all do not hear. Only if you can't hear the audio from this, let me know in the chat. If I don't see anything, I'm going to assume that y'all hear it. All right.
What's your take about the concept of the soul? So, for example, I saw an interview with Jizza, who was on your show at one point. He believes in the soul, but he also believes in science and so forth. Do you think there's such a thing as a soul?
So let's go back 120 years.
Okay.
The discovery of X-rays. Okay, Wilhelm Röntgen. They're still called Röntgen rays in Europe. We call them X-rays. You can see through the body and see bones and things, all right? You realize religious people of the day said, we can see into the body. Let's X-ray people while they're on their deathbed. And as they die, let's see if we can see something rising up out of the body.
Huh.
I'm all for that, okay? A new tool, you think something is true and they want to test it. Of course, they didn't see anything. Okay. But I admire the urge to test a claim or a supposition. All right. We'll fast forward to today. Like, who are you? Is there something in you that lives independent of your physical existence? That would be
the soul.
What a soul would be. All right. All right. What I do know is everything you are derives from electrochemical synapses running in your brain. This is a great triumph for our understanding of physiology. Aristotle said your feelings are in your heart. He got a lot wrong in the sciences, especially in the physical sciences, that among them.
Yep.
But he was trying. I applaud the effort, like I say. So here's something interesting. You go to a funeral parlor and your friend Frederick just died, let's say. And you go to the funeral parlor, you don't say, hey, which room is Freddie in? You say, where is the body of Fred? We all say that. That's a tacit admission that the body of Fred is not Fred. That Fred is something else that's no longer there. And that matches perfectly with the concept of a soul. But even if you don't believe in souls, you're probably still the person who's going to say, where's the body of Fred? So you recognize there was something there when they were alive that isn't there when they're dead. Well, what is it that was there when they were alive? Well, we have some evidence for this. The neurosynapses of your brain. And how do we know the brain is you? Because you can stroke out bits by bits of your brain. We do the scan of the brain and the whole sections that just shut down. And as that happens, if it's a multiple strokes rather than one massive stroke, as that happens, you lose the ability to speak, you lose knowledge of who you are, of where you, all the things that we associate with you. You lose your personality. And in the limit, none of your brain works except the basal motor functions that keeps your heart alive. You're still alive. Where's your soul now? When I can't even talk to you. You don't even know where you are or what you're doing or what's happening to you. You have no awareness. So I remain unconvinced that the soul is something other than a word we give to your neurosynaptic thoughts that enable you to say, I am an individual and I have a consciousness. But that consciousness is linked to the activity of your brain. And when you die, your brain shuts down just the same way it died, just the same way your brain shuts down if you're brain dead. So I would assert that the you is neither in the dead body where there's no brain function or in the living body where there's no brain function. Localizing the activity to the brain.
So I hope that y'all were able to catch the line of questioning and the argument from Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson regarding this question of, does the soul exist? And what he essentially, he's not necessarily making an argument against the existence of the soul, but it appears that he's saying that if there is a soul, that it is the word that we're using to describe the synaptic connections associated with the personality of the individual. And so the question is, what is your opinion on, what he says in terms of his answer regarding the soul? And, I don't know why people are scared to hit the link and give their opinion. And so this is, this is not a lecture. This is just a community discussion. I want to challenge some concepts, and we can build together, And so I saw a few responses in text form in the chat concerning the question. So I put this up earlier, so I'll put it up. So non-swirl zone says to take the question using the first law of thermodynamics, that matter cannot be created or destroyed, so the soul is energy created by the brain. Now we'll definitely have to get into that, because I think that may be a limitation to our understanding of English, and because energy is simply the ability to do something, to make something happen. And so the ability to do something isn't necessarily the, how should I say? So many folks take energy to be a substance, right? And so, but energy is not a substance. It is a measurement in the same way that temperature is a measurement, right? That you use to describe the degree of heat, or the way that molecules, how fast molecules, air molecules, are moving. And so I see we have two individuals who have joined us today. So it looks like Ankoma Dejed and Sister Mika One. Peace and blessings, and welcome to the Mbongi.
Peace. I can be heard?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
And I hear you too, Ankoma.
Bless up, man. Yes, sir.
All right.
Well, ladies first, Mika. So,
yeah, I was gonna say, I agree with what he said. I think soul is your personality, your thoughts, your feeling, your desire. I think that's what makes a soul. So I agree with what he said.
All right.
And normally when people talking about spirit and soul, I see you have it like if it's synonymous, but people just make a distinction between the spirit and the soul too now. Because according to what Neil Tyson saying there, it come like, according to his definition of the soul, which would be your synapses, your neural synapses, however, it come like, according to that definition, your soul could outlive your body then, because if you have recordings or your creative works or the things that you have produced during your lifetime, and then they might exist beyond your physical body, but those are the results of the neural synapses, what you created now. You understand? So in that way, your soul or the soul of an individual could outlast the physical incarnation then.
So if I understand correctly, like, okay, so let's just say, so if we're talking about, let's say, James Brown, the late musician James Brown.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the experiences that he's had has shaped his personality, which was infused into his music and style. So would you say that his soul, so it seems like you're saying that his soul still exists because evidence of his personality, for example, through his music still exists because people are still playing it. And not only that, people are imitating him, or, you know, or his essence and his spirit, so to speak. So by that definition, but you're not saying that the soul is a and kind of physical, ethereal, entity that is floating.
We taking it from the aspect of how Neil Tyson deGrasse trying to describe it as your neural synapses or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Not from the usual, from the common understanding or the common perception of the soul as, like, as you say, some kind of metaphysical, supernatural kind of entity or whatever it is, you know. But with what you're saying with this conversation, and I'm sure you might know the origin of it. It have a saying that is, say, basically, once your name could be remembered, or once people call upon your name, it come like you still have life now. I think this is that inside our African culture. I don't know if you could elaborate on that, sir.
But I got a question.
Yes.
So would you think the soul and the spirit is like one and the same, or you think they like separate?
Well, I'm a hold off on my take because I want to hear more of y'all takes. I don't want my take to kind of dominate and overshadow. So at this juncture, I'm just, answering maybe just general questions and asking, for conversation and feedback from the audience. So I want this to be an interactive thing. So to answer Koma's question, yes, that's a big thing. So in ancient Egypt, for example, and especially amongst the collagen semi-nomadic peoples of the Sudan and Kenya, right? The Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, primarily in Kenya. And we have one other person who's joined the conversation. So welcome to the Mbongi. How do you pronounce that? Mannheim?
Mannheim.
Mannheim.
Yes, right. Mannheim.
Thank you for joining. And so I'm gonna answer this, and then I'm come straight to you. So for example, the collagen, they believe in reincarnation, and the way that you reincarnate is to name your children after an ancestor, because the name is what embodies the soul or the spirit. And so once you name your after an ancestor, it is as if that individual is being reborn in the child, if that makes sense.
Yeah, man. And
no, it depends on which culture you're referring to, because reincarnation is seen differently in different places. In some other places, people are literally born with the memories of those who have passed away. Sometimes in completely different families that they don't even know. Sometimes they are not even in the same city, even the same village. So in some cultures it's literally, but in some cultures also, like you said, yes, they name the children after their grandparents or something. Maybe usually they will say, oh, this is our grandfather who have come back, or sometimes they may find a mark in the body of that child that the late grandfather or the late person that passed away has that same mark, and they may identify as saying that maybe this is a person who have returned back because this person has come back with the same mark that he or she had before they passed away. So there are many other things. Then when I was listening to Dr. Tyson, I think the way he described it is so in such a narrow way, because if I understand very well what he was saying is that he doesn't believe that, he doesn't have any proof that the soul or spirit exists, because, for example, somebody had a stroke or something that the person can no longer speak because that part of the brain is shut down. But the problem is, even though the part of the brain is shut down, that the person cannot speak, that is the physical body. But is he saying that the spiritual part should overcome that physical damage of the body of the machine to speak, to prove that to prove that the spirit is there or the soul is there? Even though there's a part of the brain that is damaged, yeah, that is true. It means that there's a damage. That's a physical body. But I don't know if you want the spirit to say, hey, despite the fact that this brain is damaged, I'm still here. Can you hear me? I don't think it works like that. I read if he's looking at it in the scientific sense, maybe, but in the normal philosophical sense, even in logic, it doesn't work, because the body is a machine. The body can be damaged. That doesn't mean that your leg can break your leg, break your hand. That doesn't mean that there are no veins that are flowing there. So I do not believe that the spirit will say, okay, let me bypass the brain damage. Okay, because we have seen an example where people have been in coma for a very long time, which those who were sitting in the hospital room or the doctor speaking, they think that they were not hearing. There was no activities in the brain. But at some point, when they revive again, they could tell whatever was going on in that room, even though the doctor considered them brain dead. So are we then saying that because the brain was dead, it means the people were not listening? Maybe, the way I look at it, maybe even somebody have a brain damage or a stroke or something that cannot speak, possibly the person they could hear, they could understand, but they don't have the ability to respond back to you. In some cases, you say, if you can hear me, just shake your finger a little bit. If you can hear me, just move your toe a little bit, because we have the feeling that maybe they're not communicating, but they could understand, or but something is preventing them. That means the body is preventing them from speaking. This issue of the soul. Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to interject there in the context of what Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about. So, for example, a coma, being in a coma is one thing. But let's say, for example, that somebody gets dementia or gets Alzheimer's, and they act differently. They have no memories of who they are. They can speak. They haven't lost the language ability to understand language, but who they are is not being presented, saying through that body, because there's something wrong there. So that's kind of like what he was saying in the context of the funeral example. So like when you say that, you don't say that so and so is right there, you'll say their body is there. But what he was saying, that that's a kind of an indirect way of saying that there's some understanding that that's a body, but who he is something else. Yeah, right.
So what
that
you say?
aspect is
So would you say he lost his soul because his personality would be part of his soul?
It depends. See, like I don't have I have an academic argument from an analysis of different languages and African cultures, for example, because I deal with Africa. So what they do in Asia and Europe, I don't know, but in Africa, I have a kind of a good grasp. And there's differing concepts, there's conflicting concepts, and there are a few concepts that are more simple than we think. So this is why you have to ask the question in so many different ways, because let's say, for example, if I ask you, do you believe in spirit and the soul? Let's just say you say yes. Second question would be, is the soul and the spirit the same thing? You can answer yes or no. Okay. What evidence is there? Okay, so let's just, before I go there, how would you define a spirit or a soul? What makes them the same if you believe they're the same? What differentiates them? Do you believe that, so outside of, because you can define something, that doesn't necessarily mean you think it exists. Like I can define a unicorn, which is, a horse-like animal with a pointy thing, I don't know what you would call it.
A horn?
The horn, yeah, sticking out of the forehead with wings. Now, I could describe it, but that doesn't mean I believe it exists. So the existence question is a separate question.
All right, but here what I'm saying, Neil Tyson deGrasse, his explanation there, it really more akin to what the concept of what we call the mind. You understand?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's exactly how for example, the ancient Egyptians defined it.
Yeah, I think the soul. I think the soul is not something we interact with. I think the soul is what deals with the afterlife, and the spirit. What we call as the spirit could be the animation, which could be present, is there, but because if we go like in some Bantu cultures, you have situation like in some tribes in Congo where they can animate a body to come back, but the body is there, but the person is not there. Like that individual is gone, but the body animation is standing there looking at you, and but does not. It just doesn't remember or cannot do anything. And also in the Bantu's culture, before it is only recently that this question of started asking whether there is a soul, there is no soul, there's a spiritual spirit. That is even a question in Bantu cultures before the Western religions started coming in and polluting the whole place. They believe that no one dies, and the Bantus believe that they believe in one God, but they believe that God does not interact with humans. The supreme being does not interact with humans. And the only way we can speak to him is through our immediate relatives who have gone before us. And sometimes one of the ways that they will invoke, or they'll call the name of their fathers, their grandfathers, or their brothers, someone who have gone before them to intercede on their behalf. Similar to what the Catholic Church is doing today, where you rarely hear them pray directly to Jesus. They'll pray through the saints. Saint this, pray for us. Saint that, pray for us. The prayers of the leading of the saints. The prayer. So that is basically mostly like a copy of the Bantu culture itself, because that is how they believe that they speak. The only way they can communicate with God is through the spirit of their relatives. So, and that by itself create a lot of problem because so many Europeans thought that they were worshiping many gods, which was not the concept. The concept was that the spirit of their relatives who have died are interceding on their behalf to before the supreme creator. And it is only recently that we are starting debating. There was no doubt in the Bantu system that there was a spirit and that people don't die. That even those who have gone before you, they are still around you. They are still present. They still interfere with your day-to-day life. They look after their relatives. They protect them from harm, from all the things. So this was a natural belief that most Africans, especially the Bantu. So it is sometimes, so when we hear this, when people are debating about the spirit in the Western world, this is mostly a Western concept. And we must able to, if we're going to address this kind of issue, we must look at what concept are we addressing in which society, because in every society, they see spirit and souls as different. Like I said, in the Bantu culture, their family members are still alive. They don't die. They are always around them, and they can always talk to them. They can always call to them. They do libation to them to intercede before the supreme being. And when I see sometimes the Europeans say, "Oh, the Africans worship many gods," but at the same time, they have copied the same system, and that is exactly what the Catholic Church is practicing, because all their prayers is through the saint, through the Holy Mary, through the saint. What is different from that of the Bantu? That's the same thing. So, I really believe that the soul and the soul exist. Without soul, the whole life itself would be meaningless. Like from the culture I came from, it is not even a question. We believe that our ancestors are around us and they do intercede on our behalf. It's not even a question.
Well, I'm going to just because I remember I did a lecture way back in 2015 on African concepts of spirit, and so I'm just going to name a few slides, because when reading the literature, and I have to be careful, because I have to remember that, you know, these African people, they have a native language and they're trying to translate into English African concepts. And so a dominant characteristic of when I'm reading African literature and they're trying to define spirit, they define it usually as energy, force, or power, and they're all used interchangeably. Some will kind of say it's a consciousness or a thought, and then a lot of places these entities are personified. For example, in ancient Kemet. And so when we, for example, when we talk about the Ba, so it's the Ba that is really the developing personality and mind and thought. And then if which becomes the shadow or the double of the person. And if that person lived in an exemplary life, he would, that quote unquote soul, that double, would be given a new title, which would be called Aku, or which would be called Mulungu in Dau, for example, in southeastern Africa. So for example, we have like Malidoma Some from his text, The Healing Wisdom of Africa, 98. And he says, indigenous people see the physical world as a reflection of a more complex, subtler, and more lasting yet invisible entity called energy. If something in the physical world is experiencing instability, it is because its energetic correspondent has been experiencing instability. Right. So he's saying that the spirit world itself is just energy. But this is where I'll be like, this is where we have to be careful about translating African concepts into English, because energy is a measurement. It's not an entity unto itself, right? We'll come back there if needed. Let me see. So John S. Mbiti in African Religions and Philosophy says spirits consist of extra human beings and the spirits of men who died a long time ago. Doesn't really define what that is. In the boiling energy, when speaking among the Kalahari Kung in southwestern Africa, he says the Kung say Kia, which is an alternate state of consciousness, comes from activation of an energy that they call Noom. And Noom was originally given to the Kung by the gods. Though experiencing Kia, or this altered state of consciousness, is a necessary prerequisite to healing, it is painful and feared. The cause of Kia, the activated Noom, is said to boil fiercely within the person. I could stop there. I just wanted to get that part there. Adama and Naomi Diombia, out of, are they Mali? Or where are they? Or Cote d'Ivoire? It's somewhere in West Africa in that region. He says the way of the text is the way of the elders. He says everywhere spirit belongs to spirit. Excuse me, every spirit belongs to spirit. We pray to these sacred mediators who share in the supreme power. Our spiritual well-being is dependent upon our relationship to them. Every one of us has the power to commune with these forces through prayer and sacrifice. So we can see here, even though it's not like a direct definition, they're equating spirit and forces, like they're entities, but they're being defined as forces. Here he says some of our spirits live as human beings, others are forces of nature. They respond to our petitions, though they also operate from their own agendas. The focus, and that's really an independent question there, even though that's not a question, but that sparks a question, because let's just say that spirit exists, right? So if you say it is a force or it is energy, even though these aren't physical concepts, do they have agency, right? And to what degree does these forces have agency? And so, like, if these forces have agency, the weak and strong nuclear force in an atom have agency? Does gravity as a force have agency? Does the electromagnetic force have agency? Like, these are further questions. I'm gonna continue. It says the focus of our lives is how effectively to interact with the world of spirit. They are always communicating their wishes, demands, and prescriptions to us directly or through our diviners and healers. Divinities draw their power and wisdom from spirit, and we draw ours from there. And so, yes. So Niyama is the energy that emanates from spirit. So it would appear here, at least for them, that energy and spirit are two different things and flows through the universe. It is the life force. So he's talking about Niyama, energy and life force, that links all of existence together, humans, animals, plants. This energy of the universe shapes nature into as many forms as yields to our handling of its power. All right. So in this text here is Jean-Pierre Halle and Alex Pele in the book Pygmy Kitabu in 1973. I'm just going to go down here. It says, in the Ife language, Ilani or Ila is energy, force, power, or strength. The Pygmies use this word to describe any form of energy. Iletado, pulling energy, is the Ife name for the magnetic force embodied in lodestones. But Ila is also their word for, like, God. His text explains that Elimina probably represents the original Swa name of the supreme being, thus of God. So like Ila among them is like spirit or God. And we can go like Ashe is pure force in the Yoruba, vital force. That's what this is talking about here. Um, so I'll stop there, and so I can get some feedback from you all.
It's fascinating how things have changed over many years. When we were kids, we used to see things very differently. Like when we know things were good. Like when I was young, I know tribes in the area where I were, tribes whose job were they had the power to actually invoke people who have passed away. Like seriously, like
Mhm.
where if somebody passed away and there's an information or something that you guys need to know, and you go to this tribe, will actually invoke this person who will come before you and answer all your questions and then vanish. These things were happening until sometimes I think in the late 90s or so. Before, and all of a sudden I don't hear about this again. But this was very common for families to go to these villages where they have to find out what killed their relatives if they die of a sudden death or something, or trying to resolve something they were actually involved. And also in some of these cultures, we also know that animals like cats and dogs, according to what my grandparents told me and what tradition told me in many of the Bantu cultures, that these animals can actually see a person dies days before they even passed away.
Hmm.
Dogs, if somebody's going to pass away in a particular house and there's a dog in that house, that dog will cry and cry and cry, will bark all day, all night, will not stop, because somehow the dog has, according to what our parent told us, is that those dogs have already seen the spirit of that person leave, or they have seen it's about to leave. And dogs will chase air outside, which things that no one can see. And cats also have that same power. They can see when a person is going to die, or a person is dying, or a person has died and nobody knows. They will know. And from their distress and their actions, you will know that something is going to happen, something is going wrong. And this has happened many times. When sometime a grandparent is going to pass away, the first thing you know is from the dog or from the cat. So I do not believe that the human body, the human soul is just, or the spirit is just what it is. The essence of us is, because besides, even scientists have still not been able to articulate exactly what is consciousness. Everything they have is theories, but they are not able to find out exactly what is consciousness, what makes you you, what makes me me, why am I aware. So
Well, I think they would respond in a way like, I would think like from a scientist, and I know that since I invoked Neil deGrasse Tyson earlier, he's actually had this discussion with a number of neuroscientists, about what is consciousness, and they'll say that we have not come to a agreed upon consensus in terms of what makes people conscious, fully what is consciousness and the like, but it's something that they're working on. And so we got to be careful to distinguish that just because something is not understood now, that it is unable to be understood in the future. So you have those people working on that traditionally, and in the kind of modern scientific fields of like neuroscience, like we understand it today. But I want to invoke Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with him, Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu is originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we actually had him here on the Mbongi relatively recently. So if you go on the main page on this YouTube page, you should be able to see him at the top of the videos. because we posted that interview relatively recent. But he's come out with a number of texts, and but what is in front of me is his 2005 PhD dissertation titled is reconstructing, well, I think it's the colonial gaze, reconstructing African wisdom traditions. And he is an individual who has studied under various African wisdom traditions. So he doesn't like to use the term secret societies. So he substitutes them in this text with the. So if you ever hear me say wisdom tradition or wisdom center, that's what I should use more. So wisdom center for the actual institution of the quote unquote secret society. The wisdom tradition is more broad in the cultural sense of a particular group. But in this part of the dissertation, he's introducing this concept. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. He's introducing this concept of the open and closed senses. He says that you're born with these extra senses that are closed, but that are reopened under initiation. But your regular open senses are what we would call your five senses. You know, your eyes or your ability to see, touch, taste, and smell, right? And so it is understanding that for him, and the reason why I'm bringing Dr. Kajangu up is because when you read this text, he sounds like Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson on what we just heard, but he's speaking upon the African traditions, and keep in mind as well that he was also a student and initiated under Credo Mutwa in the Amazulu tradition in South or Azania, South Africa, and so you know he's well trenched in African wisdom traditions, more specifically Bantu than any other, but because he's traveled along those routes in being initiated in South Africa, Central Africa, Malawi, and other places. So now he's about to describe the quote unquote double of the human being and how the double is created at birth, but it grows and develops as you grow and develop as a person through time and space. And is that which survives your death. So now I'm just going to read what he says. So what page is this? 197. All right. Yeah. So the second major characteristic of the open senses is that they build the self, which is known as the double in most African wisdom traditions. Post-colonial scholars have written extensively about the double. For example, deGrasse, 1985, Malidoma Some, 1994, Credo Mutwa, 1964. I will use mostly insights from Mutwa, whose research about the double is most compelling. According to him, the double is the component of the self that builds itself with all the experiences manufactured by the open senses. In other words, the double is the record of the seeds of destiny. This means that the double is the carbon copy of all the experiences that human beings go through. And this is kind of reflective of what Foucault has said as well in his text. But I digress right there. So now he's quoting Mutwa, the late Credo Mutwa. When a baby is born, it is born with a body, a mind, and a soul, but not with an inner, a double. The inner grows like a flower as the child and is formed and nourished by the experiences of the growing child. It is shaped by the child's own character and also the characters of those whom the child chooses to imitate, such as parents or tribal hero. So now it is Kajangu again. What are the features of the double? The description of the double that I provide draws from my library research and discussions with elders. First, the double is not innate, but it grows from experiences. When we are born, we do not have doubles. We are a clean slate ready to be filled by the experiences that we will go through. However, the double is not a passive recipient of experiences. It is like a bank account, which is available for those who have put something into it. In the pursuit of perfection, the double becomes the most cherished prize that a human being can ever attain because it enables us to receive feedback from the experiences that we have been through. Second, the double is the component part of a human being which remains accessible after death. When we die, the only thing that remains is the double. It is the entity that appears in the dreams and the visionary experiences of the living. It is believed that the doubles of people who have achieved perfection can be used by their descendants to seek advice on how to stem the tide of life's challenges on earth. This is the root belief in the existence of ancestors. So he's telling you here that according to this framework, the ancestor of someone is really their spirit double or their double, right?
Yeah.
So finally, the double is the spaceship that the soul uses to travel in time and eternity. Only those doubles that are well designed can venture into the realm of eternity and search for answers to the challenges of life. The double provides accounts of its travel in time and in eternity through visions and dreams. So in this framework, the soul and the double are different, but we can see that what is being articulated as the double here would essentially kind of coincide with what Dr. Tyson was talking about. So from at least from this perspective, what Dr. Tyson was talking about would be what for Credo Mutwa or the Zulus in general, the inner, the spirit double.
Okay.
And so hold on, before you go, I want to see if the any of the other two panelists have anything to say or respond to this first, and then we'll go to you.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I got something to say. Every time when I hear like spirit and soul, to me it comes from like a religious point of view. And humans, we make up stuff. So I'm not gonna say I believe any of this soul spirit stuff, but I understand what they're trying to, say. So that's my point on it.
Alrighty. And Akoma, if you have anything to say. If you're still there.
Maybe it's mute.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he is mute. So if you're listening, you're trying to say something, your microphone is muted. Okay, we'll just move forward. Okay, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I think one other issue that we have to look at, which is being a debate within science itself, is the question of reality. If we're going to be looking at soul and spirit, whether they exist or not, also, the question we have to ask ourselves, is reality real also? Because that's a question that has been debated. Because if we don't understand what reality actually is, then how can we even determine if we are not somebody's hologram or animation from somewhere that somebody have put us in a box in this universe that we know that has a beginning, and we don't even know why we are here. We are made up of the same stuff that make up the universe. And if the universe had a beginning, therefore, is it possible that there's something that we will never know? Is it possible that there's something that no matter how much we try to figure out, we're never going to know? Because if the universe has a beginning, then it's possible that there has to be a creator, because nothing comes from nothing. So if that is the case, it means whoever is responsible to starting the Big Bang, that Big Bang must live outside of the Big Bang. And if we are in this universe, which is a net, which we are just like in a box that has a small beginning, therefore, are we ever going to know what is outside the outside the universe itself? And are we going to be able to punch the hole between time and space to see what is outside the universe, to know what started the Big Bang? And if not, what makes us feel that we are real? Even like, maybe we may just be somebody's.
I mean, that's there was a whole Matrix movie
Yes.
centered around that question, you know, and but that's the philosophy of it. So again, it is really kind of one thing that I've learned over the years is that, you know, a lot of these questions that we ask really has to be broken down within an individual cultural context. And we can't use the European as the universal idea. So like I seen this comment here, right? So this topic goes along with, is atheism African debate discussion? And you know, we got to be, you know, careful in how we word the question, because you know the concept of an African is really a European thing, because they're the ones who set the border. They're the ones who decided on the name of the continent and who was grouped and who was African and not. So that's one hurdle that we got to get over. And then secondly, you know, are you talking about African from a cultural perspective or African from an individual African perspective? Meaning, you know, are you willing to accept the notion of an African atheist if you find on the continent an individual that believes or does not believe that there's a God or evidence for God, etc., or will you only accept it from the context of a community or a cultural identity regarding that specific thing? So we would have to be, you know, very crystal clear in how we word it. But for those in the traditional sense, what, you know, and I've argued this especially against Brother Unk and others, is that, you know, from a general, that's why I got to use my words carefully. From a general African perspective, it is impossible for one to be an atheist because of how they define what God is. See, in the Western perspective, God is an entity all by itself, and it created, quote unquote, creation ex nihilo, external from itself. Whereas you'll find on the continent, all across the continent of Africa, that God is simply existence itself, that it is everything and all things at once. And so from that particular perspective, you cannot exist and then try to argue that God does not exist when God is existence itself. So what you're saying is that existence doesn't exist. So we always have to be clear on how we're defining these terms as a basis for how we're going to argue for or against certain things, right? So from that perspective of God being existence itself, it's not a question from a general African perspective. That's not even a well-formed question. Does God exist? You know, now what is the full nature of God? That begins some intelligent questions from an African perspective. You know, and so, you know, whether the soul and spirit and, you know, do these things exist or not, again, you would have to go from an individual, asking an individual, and then interrogating a whole culture in terms of their traditional beliefs, and to be able to answer that question.
Right, because God could be anything, just like spirit and soul could be anything. Because I think somebody was telling me that, oh, spirit could live outside your body and some stuff like. I was like, what? About quantum physics or whatever. It was on one of your posts, but I ain't understand what he's talking about. But anyway.
But that's why I said, like, for those that define spirit as energy or force, you can't say that it doesn't exist, but then we'll try to argue, you know, for example, of the four fundamental forces or interactions, as we would say, in quantum mechanics, in terms of the weakened nuclear forces, the electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force, which in reality, they more speak so now of fields, right, and interactions. But if you believe in a force, then, you know,
Right.
there has to be a force carrier, you know,
Uh-huh.
like bosons and all this other kind of stuff. If you believe in gravity as a force, and, you know,
Yeah. Like in my
you have to believe in graviton. I'm sorry, go ahead.
right, like in my Hebrews, they used to say spirit was like ruha or something like that, and that was like the wind, the air. So the air would be the spirit.
Yeah, but that's more so of a metaphor. You'll find that across the world and in certain places in Africa as well. So that what there is more so of a metaphoric description of what a spirit is. So matter of fact, if I can find it, I'm hoping, because okay, so I'm gonna start from here. Right. So this is from my conversation on the linguistic connection between the Bantu Congo concept of Inkisi and the word nature. Right. So prior to these slides, I went through the linguistic analysis, which we won't go through. So, but as a result of that linguistic analysis, we're able to find cognates for the term nature in a number of other African languages. So, for example, the Lugbata people in the northeastern part of the Congo and lower part of the Sudan, they call the equivalent of nature adro. And so it doesn't have the N prefix on the word netter. And so here's a good text here. Lugbata religion, ritual and authority among the and East African people, published in 1960. So on pages 252 to 255, it states the following. I translate Adro and Adroa as God, although the correspondence of meaning is not exact. Adro, the basic form of the term, refers to a personified force outside the control and beyond the understanding of living men who are his creatures. So let's pause here for a second and kind of digest what he said. He says that the Adro is a personified force outside the control and beyond the understanding of human beings. And he continues, indeed, unlike our term God, Adro is used also to refer to a category of objects, which are the manifestations of divinity and beyond the control and understanding of men. Many apparently miraculous things are called Adro, such as what I have called the guardian spirit of man, or even matches. The word is sometimes used for testicles and for the power of procreation. So we can see there's a wide semantic range of this term here. So if he was just to say God, it wouldn't be accurate. Like you would have to add some context to that. Adro lives on earth, especially in rivers. He is also found in large trees and thickets and on high mountains and rocky places. He is in every stream. Adro is common to all Lugbara. In addition, each clan has its own spirit called Adro. The clan is a dispersed group which is not concerned in corporate activity. The spirit is also a manifestation of God's power, and in many cases is thought of as having been a distant ancestor. Talking about Big Adro with the capital A, right? So in Oduyoye has an article in this. Well, he has several articles and chapters in this text, traditional religion in West Africa. But so the linguistic cognate in the Twi language, for example, of ancient Egyptian ka is kra or kla. And he says we can think of the kra or kla as consciousness, that part of the man that responds to a calling. So remember well, I don't know if I said this earlier, in some places the soul is attached to the name. And so in this conversation that he's having in this part of the text, he's showing the relationship between the concept of name and the soul. So when but that's a different conversation. But what I really wanted to get to was this here. So the Ga of West Africa, it may not look like it, but trust me at this moment that this word won or won is linguistically cognate with the ancient Egyptian word neter.
Interesting.
There's a number of sound changes that happen, but this is the exact same word. So this is important for our analysis because when you find cognates in related languages, then regarding ancient Egyptian, we can verify or expand our understanding of these concepts because they still exist in these living traditions that we can access today. So that won or won is cognate also with a variant in ancient Egyptian Iwin, which is an epithet usually used for Osiris and others. In the Yoruba language, it's Iwin, ancestors, ghost spirits. In the Ingas, won, ancestors, the living dead, shades. And among the Bachama in Chad, won, the demigod in charge of the dead, the demigod in charge of the kingdom of death, which is exactly what Osiris is. So this is Osiris in West Africa, is Won, right? And so there's a text called Religion and Medicine of the God People. And he says, a Won by God definition, is anything that can work but not be seen, and includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activities associated with medicines and magic. So they're saying it's a force, but the key characteristic of it is that it can do work, but it can't be seen. So this is why I say, so let's go back now to let me go to the conversation on energy. right? Because I have is it still okay? So, for example, in physics, a force is any interaction that, when unopposed, will change the motion of an object. A force can cause an object with a mass to change its velocity, which includes to begin moving from a state of rest. But I'm trying to find where I have the words energy defined. It might be in the same. Here we go. So important evidence. So, power and energy essentially have the same meanings. So power, and this is from the source for these definitions is the online etymological dictionary. So power, the ability, or it just means ability to act or do, strength, vigor, might, efficacy, control, mastery, lordship, dominion, ability, or right to command or control, legal power or authority, authorization, military force, and army. Energy, the ability to act, lead others, affect, etc., forcefully, the capacity for vigorous activity, available power, or available power, from Proto-Indo-European work, meaning to do. Also work is where we get the word work from, right? So hold on, let me add whoever just came in. Peace and blessings to Kagatelopele. I know I messed that all up, but if you could pronounce your name for it.
Hi, Asa. My name is Khatelopele.
Kagatelopele. I'm gonna get it. I know that's South African. I can tell by the it's like guapale.
Yeah, it's South Africa. I'm in South Africa, right in Johannesburg.
Wow.
Indeed.
Yeah, the name is Khatelo. Just go like Khatelopele.
Katelopele.
Yeah, you got it.
Katelopele.
Yeah.
Already.
That's correct.
Hold on.
Thank
So
you,
we see here. You're welcome. I'm gonna make this last point, and I'm gonna let you chime in. Right. So we
right.
read earlier. And I gotta find the slide again. So what slide is this? This is slide 31.
I like the spirituality thing because it's close to spirit, so you think it's like kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So so here we go. So yeah, a won, a nature, an ancestor, a living shade, these are all cognitive terms. Spirit is by God definition anything that can work but not be seen. That is exactly how we would in English define energy.
Right.
Right. So so this was the purpose of this this conversation I was having in these slideshows, is that energy is a property of matter. So it is it's just like if I ask you how tall you are or how much you weigh. Those are properties of matter in terms of weight, height, etc. And so is energy, it's the ability to do work. So what we're calling spirit still has to be attached to something. So this is why and I've shown elsewhere, especially in ancient Egypt, as well as specifically among the Baluba people, and even among the Bakongo, a living person can be considered a spirit, and you got to be initiated, elected, like for example a king. That's where you get the whole concept of quote unquote divine kingship. They have no idea what they're talking about. You know, it's like a spirit is almost like a title. Is not even a title. That's not even a good word. It's more so like a class of human. Like for those that are living, it's like a class, a fraternity of some sort. Because you can be made a spirit while living. That's what a king is across Africa in the traditional sense. They're made. They're you'll see in the literature them being called a living ancestor, right? So, but our good brother who just joined, welcome to the Mbongi, and what are your thoughts and opinions on what has been said thus far?
All right, Asa. Thank you, man. Yeah, I've just joined now, but I do get what you're speaking about regarding spirit. Yeah, according to my understanding of the spirit, I think spirit is more of something that you cannot touch, something that exists but does things that the mind and a physical, let me say, things that in your physicality cannot be performed. For instance, I'll give you an example. If you have cockroaches emanating or just getting formulated from some rubbish in a certain corner where you maybe put some rubbish, dust, a little heap on in a corner there, then that get to be converted into some rubbish or dust mite. There is a spirit there.
All right. Hello.
Interesting. Interesting.
You go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, what's interesting, and what you have also illustrated during your PowerPoint is very interesting. Like, one of our sister here just wrote on the screen and said how it is very interesting topic. How do you explain an example of someone, an individual who suffered traumatic brain injuries and woke up speaking a foreign language fluently? It's fascinating, which is also the same point I was trying to make earlier when I said people get up from coma after many years and they could tell you what has been going on even though they were brain dead. And also, is it possible? First, let me ask you this question, brother. Imhotep. Do you believe in there's a creator?
No, I don't believe in a creator. But let me qualify that statement. I tend to believe in the general African consensus that God is existence itself. Now, in according to Jordan Gabani, in his text "Conflict of Minds," for example, he gives a Zulu name and title for God. Not in Kaka. What is the word that you use? Hold on, I gotta look it because I don't want to mess it up. Ukobo. That's it. Ukobo. It's a word that means the truth and existence. Ukobo. And we are just like the Adro, how you have the big Adro among the Lugbara, but you have the little Adro. Like in ancient Egypt, you have Wer-Necher, the great Necher, and then you have the Necheru, the smaller ones. Just like in among the Igbo, you have Chu is a great Necher, but everyone also has Chi. You know, in these places, God is existence, and as I like the way that Jordan Gabani articulates it, because he goes into detail saying, you know, for the Amazulu, especially in his area, the God is an infinity, and nothing can exist the infinity. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an infinity. So that means any and everything has the fundamental substance has always existed, because that is God itself. In that there's just an internal within the infinity of motion and movement and change and interaction that creates new forms of existence, if that makes any sense. And so it's not, and you find the same thing in ancient Kemet as well, with Kepler, you know, coming out of the Nun, and you know, him being existence and creating new existences from his existence that you'll see in the text. And so with that saying, there's not a creator in the same sense that there's like in the biblical text, where there's an external God that creates ex nihilo outside of himself. From the general African perspective, there is creation happening, is an ongoing, it's not a set thing, right? So it's the order of the day is evolutions. So I believe, you know, or I agree with the concept of an infinite existing entity. I am agreeing with an infinite existent entity that evolves inside of itself, and there's continuing creation, ongoing for eternity, versus a creator that just says this is what exists and is going to be that way forever. And so that's kind of different than, so I you know, I know that's a long way of saying what I said, but so I hope that brings context.
It's fascinating. The reason why I ask that question is because there's just so many different custom and concepts in different cultures that seem so different from each other. And that was why I asked this question, because I was asking the question because if there is one creator, like you try to say, is it, the next question I was going to ask, is it possible that there are different gods that created different people in the world, like the African, and their concept is so different that it's so foreign from that of the Europeans of the West, that it is impossible that they are worshiping the same God. Like then you go to the East, you find different concepts and different traditions that are so foreign to that of others that it is not possible that it's the same creator that is like you said. It seems like what you said, that God is this is creator itself. The people within it are creating something for themselves within that creation itself. Does that make sense?
Can you please repeat that last part again?
Like saying that God, creation itself is God, the universe itself is God, everything we see around is God. Is it possible that humans are within this creation are creating their are then creating their own reality themselves?
I think to a certain degree we create our own reality on a day-to-day basis. But there's realities within realities. So you create your own reality by how you interact with your environment. But your environment also includes other human beings, right? So they help shape your reality, because even the language that you're using to communicate with other people was given to you by the people who came before you. You just grew up hearing them speak, and then you begin to imitate them. So your social environment also shapes your reality, right? And the words that exist and the customs that exist within your geopolitical space, right? But even that community exists within a physical environment with other beings that shape their reality. And then, of course, it just progressively gets bigger and bigger from there. So, when it comes to this God piece and the multiple gods, like everything is God. Like there's nothing there's nothing that is not God. So we shouldn't look at, in my personal opinion, we shouldn't look at divinity as something special, because everything is divine, because God is divine, right? So but the question is really more so about, what does it mean to be human in this divinity? And what do we mean by Ubuntu in the highest capacity? How do we become the best version of ourselves? How do we share and to use Kajangu's, Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu's language, how can we celebrate life's beauties and make life more pleasant on earth?
Yeah, Asa,
Given the circumstances, because with everything being an infinity, what we would consider in our human language bad things. Because think about it like this: you have to, in order for us to live, something has to die. Whether it is an animal, whether it's some kind of vegetation, in order for us to live, something has to die. And this is for every entity in the universe. So, with that said, all things are trying to eat, which means something out there is trying to kill you every single day. And there's nothing you can do about it, because part of existing is being under those universal laws of, all things must eat, right? And so, it in order for you to live, you're kind of forced to behave in a certain way that is detriment to the life of other beings, which brings about a philosophical conundrum that we must wrestle with. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, Asa,
Go ahead.
yeah, I can hear the direction of the topic now and the essence of what you're talking about. So, what I want to add here is, I just want to give an example of what is a spirit. A spirit is something that is a non-physical existence, is in non-physical existence, more so does things that in physicality cannot be done. That is the spirit. And looking into the example that I want to give you is that at some stage I was actually using some cardboard, wet cardboard, making pulp and balls that I can make fire with. And I left them under the tree. It was moist in the morning when I visited that place again. Just over 20, no, 12 hours, I found some transparent organisms big into the size of the nail. They were the size of the nail. They were about 10 of them. And when I look at that, I could see movement. It looks like an amoeba to me, but it was transparent. And I look at it that this thing is alive and it has just been formulated over 12 hours ago. And I thought there is a certain chemical reaction that has just happened there. And due the moist and the availability of the cardboard material and the maybe characteristics that were used in that cardboard, managed to produce such organisms that I was seeing for the first time. And that, to me, there was a spirit that formulated those organisms. For example, if you put some cockroach, you put some rubbish in a corner, just a little heap of dust, and there comes cockroaches or dust mites. There is a certain spirit that will manifest certain organisms, but that spirit is determined by the material that is available. The organisms that may originate there are determined by the available material or elements that could be included in a chemical reaction that the spirit is actually capable of doing. So the spirit is all over, in everywhere, on everything, on any planet, in any galaxy. There is a spirit that, not per se there is a particular spirit, but the spirit is everywhere. But it depends on a material. It depends on a available material that produces certain things. For example,
Yes.
if a human being was
No,
formed,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
if a human being was formed on this planet, yeah, hello, yes, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to wrap it up by saying, if a human being was produced, maybe let's say 1 million years ago, it means there was a certain fertile, maybe soil or fertile material that was available, and the spirit managed to maybe form a chemical reaction that produce the human being and other animals that are older on this planet. So the spirit is always there, but it depends on the available material, available substances that could go into a certain chemical reaction and produce a certain thing. So it will depend on the material availability of material
to manifest.
for that spirit to manifest certain thing. So the spirit can manifest anything in any way, but it depends on the availability of material in that particular place. Yeah.
I agree. And that's what I was kind of getting to earlier, that, you know, when I look carefully at the language and how at least in text form, and even with speaking with some elders who a lot of everybody would know, it's just what I don't know, you know, exactly what time you came into the program, but I had read earlier where the words that they're using to describe spirit is the same language, is the same definition that in the Western world we would call energy. And energy is a property of matter. Energy is not a substance or a fluid itself. It is what you describe matter's ability to do something, or its level of ability to do something. So if you're talking about a spirit, you would have to attach it to some kind of entity, whether you call it an atom, whether you call it a full-blown organism that morphs into something else that can do, then it is still attached to something. So, and I think that we also use the word spirit to kind of describe the character of something, its temperament. So like which is why we use animals, for example, as logos or totems, right? So if I'm, you know, wearing a lion's, you know, garment or whatnot, I'm saying that I celebrate or value or want to imitate that veracity that a lion exudes in his being, in his nature of existing, and the like. So I guess we would have to argue that, you know, spirit can apply to many different things. That's why in the earlier part of the conversation I said that spirit can be defined as energy or power, but also a consciousness, you know, and temperament. But I'm sorry, go ahead. I think someone was trying to say something.
Yeah, right. You're right. What you say, like it's the same thing. Like the concept of dark matter, dark energy. We know that the universe is expanding, but we cannot see what is the energy that is pushing it, but we know that there's an energy that is pushing it because it is moving. So that is also the concept of that, and also the concept of Ubuntu. Which says because of you, you are there because of me. We are there because of they, like the spirit of one person to another, creating, keep on creating, and keeping on creating. And but also,
I am because we are, therefore
exactly,
I am. Yeah.
exactly. So one cannot exist without the other. So whether they are alive or dead, one cannot exist without the other. And also, another question I wanted to ask you was that, in follow up to this, is when we look at this concept of spirit, like, and then we come to the issue of dimensions, is it possible that this spirit may be actual entities that may be operating within different dimensions, and which are real entities that are physical, but maybe one's transiting into this dimension, and they are totally in a spiritual form that we cannot see them because we cannot there's nothing like there's no such thing like nothing, because, and what is nothing, because I cannot see that doesn't mean it does not exist. So is it possible that there are spirits, things we call spirit, that are entities that may just be moving from one dimension to another?
I would argue, and I think that Dr. Maladoma Some would agree, because I read a little bit of it earlier, and I don't want to just kind of keep reading, so I'll just summarize, because it's a common thought, and what we are calling the quote unquote spirit world would, in essence, if we really broke it down and not personified everything, because we have to separate the personifications of spiritual concepts versus the reality of it. Right now, I had another professor out of northern Ghana, Dr. Alexis Tangon. So he is also like Dr. Malidoma Some of the Dagara people, but Malidoma Some comes from the Dagara that are located in Burkina Faso, whereas the colonial borders split people up. So while they're in Malidoma Some's people are in Burkina Faso, Dr. Alexis Tangon's people, which are the same people, are just in northern Ghana, but they're just stretched into those two spaces. So when he was on our program on the Mbongi, so the interview is on the channel if you want to look him up. He talks about how you know when we study nature, whether it's in the heavens or on earth, anything that we think is important that we want to pass on to the next generation, we personify it, and it becomes a deity, right? And so a lot of times when we're reading literature or listening to stories, they are it's just our African way of pedagogy or teaching, to be able to for young minds to be able to digest these concepts. Matter of fact, and I'm gonna come back to this question, Brother Kansu. He says, Ka and Ba, I've heard some Ghanaian scholars say Ka is really soul, because Ka and Ba is spirit, and most other comedics have it backwards. What are my thoughts? They're right on the Ka, and I read that earlier, because the Ka is the Kra, but they're both the same thing. Matter of fact, they're the same word from two different languages that merged, that converged in the Nile Valley. But that's a whole different conversation unto itself. So this is what happens when you have two or more different groups who share the same ancestor culture, but whose descendants later on reconvene in a particular place and introduce the same concepts, but they are pronounced differently because the languages have changed as the dialects have spread out over time. And so what happens is they'll take the same concepts and just kind of reconceptualize them in the new space. But the Ka and the Ba are the exact same thing, historically speaking, but it changes in ancient Egypt. But that's a conversation in of itself. But what I want to do is, given what you just asked, I want to share my screen real quick, because now I gotta invoke. We're gonna stay in South Africa, and I'm gonna go to the late Credu Mutwa. Right. So this is his. This is from his text, Indaba My Children, right? African folktales, Vusa Mazulu, Credo Mutwa, right? And he says a lot of things here. So I hope y'all don't mind me reading these paragraphs, but I think that it's going to provide a perspective, and I want to hear y'all's response to Credo Mutwa. For those, I don't know if y'all have read this, or if you have before, then please indulge me while I'm reintroducing it. But for the general audience who may not have come to this, I think this is going to play along into the question that you just asked. So he says, it is said that the Bantu have no conception of a universal single God, that in their religion they worship the spirits of their long dead ancestors, that they are superstitious and fetish ridden and tremble when the thunder growls. The world has been shown images carved by the Bantu, and this would appear to be the sum total of the knowledge foreigners have gained about our religion. The Bantu believe in the existence of God, but their concept of God is different from that of other races. While we believe in a heaven, our concept of heaven is totally different from that held by other races. The Bantu version of hell is an evil land, but in this land we see no devil with tail horns and a forked tongue, tormenting the souls of the wicked in eternal fire. So I'm skipping because I scanned some different pages, so these some of these don't flow directly, but I'm skipping to the part where Credu Mutwa is being initiated into Sangomahood, right? And so now one of his elders is about to give him some critical teaching, right? So my child, you know from the teachings. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. My child, you know from the teachings of your parents that every child is taught that there is a great God and that there are also the lesser gods. But you do not know just what the great God, whom we shall call the most ultimate God, is. And this you are about to this day. The most ultimate God, who is the God of the gods, is everything in everything. You heard how I described it. So remember I was saying that in certain parts of Africa, God is existence itself. So here's one verification of that. The most ultimate God, who is the God of the gods, is everything in everything. Each tree, each blade of grass, and each stone that you see out there, and each one of the things that live, be they are all parts of God, just as each one of the hairs on your head and each flea in your hair and each drop of your blood is part of you. The sun is part of God. The moon is part of God. And each one of the stars is but an infinitesimal part of him who is and yet is not. Him who was and yet was not. And him who will be and yet shall never be. Because there never was a time when God was not, and there never is a time when God can never be. Right?
Fascinating.
My child, God is more in you and is more part of you than you are in and part of yourself. He exists in you more than you exist in yourself. You were not created by God, as the aliens tell you, but you exist as part of God. Your soul is immortal because God is immortal. And your soul and mine are as much part of God as the grain of sandstone is part of the boulder that is part of the mountain. My child, I want you now to look at this ball of clay. This ball of clay is known as the ball of instruction and was first used generations ago by the great ones of the mother nation known as the Batu, from whom we all sprang, to instruct those whose duty was to carry the flaming crescent of our beliefs on to posterity. This ball has another ball inside it, and that one has still another smaller ball inside it. There are 7 balls within each other here, where you only see the outer ball. And this, my child, is the ball that symbolizes all our knowledge and all our beliefs, that everything under the sun is but part of something greater still. This ball, my son, is our symbol of infinity. So he's showing that there's a ball of clay that is wrapped in a bigger ball of clay, that is wrapped in a bigger ball of clay, that's wrapped in a bigger ball of clay 7 times. So this becomes a symbol of infinity, and that every little thing, everything is part of something bigger, right? So we're going to continue. So I do apologize for reading, but all this is going to make sense.
Fantastic. It's very interesting. Go ahead.
So he says, they continue. The teacher continues instructing Credu Mutwa. You will want to know what God looks like and how he would be interpreted by your eyes and your brain were you to see him. But my child, other than we know he exists for the very reason that we ourselves exist, we do not know for sure, and we must never never try to know for sure. No man can ever see God because you can't see infinity. And we must, because you would have to exist outside of infinity to look down into the infinity, but then it wouldn't
Exactly
be
what I was
infinity.
saying before. That's what I was talking about, the Big Bang and the
Yeah.
what was outside the bang.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're getting there.
So he exists for the very reason that we ourselves exist. We do not know for sure, and we must never try to know for sure. No man can ever see God and live or understand what he has seen. For God is such that his very essence, his very being, and his very shape would be beyond the interpretation of the human eye and the human brain. We can only guess, and the oldest guess at the possible form of God is the one that you must go and touch in the land of Swazi, when your hair begins to turn gray according to the law that binds all of the chosen ones. The other one is in the land of Botswana, and you must never let death close your eyes before you touch with your hands both these symbols of eternity. These symbols are carved in the red and white Simbiti wood, which is a sacred wood that can only be used in the carving of very holy things and images. Both these carvings show God as shaped like a great canoe with a human head at the stern and a human head at the prow. These heads are both looking up into heavens, which is a sign that God continues into infinity and has neither end nor beginning. Riding in the canoe is an image of a woman, which symbolizes the great mother, the ultimate feminine creative cause of all, and a symbol of the bisexuality of the most ultimate God. The body of the canoe stands on the back of a carved wooden crocodile without a tail, and this shows that God is neither evil nor good, neither life nor death, neither merciful nor cruel. God exists, but as far as we know, for no reason whatsoever. God is neither beneficial to us nor interested in us in any way. So this reflects something that was said earlier in the conversation, right? So this is the image that he was talking about. So you find this on page 563 of the image. So this is what I was saying. Like, we got to separate the personification of the concepts from the very concepts themselves, right? And so this is the last one, right? So he says, all these carved concepts, now this is still the teacher teaching him, all these carved concepts of the form of God are only a means of satisfying the common rabble, which cannot be made to worship any God unless that God has a shape that they can more or less understand and hold in the mind. They are also intended to discourage young people from asking too many questions, and you, O chosen one, must only bear this in the valleys of your mind, that God is there and the lesser gods are there, but no one can ever know what their forms are. A God must never be interpreted as having a fixed shape. God can assume any shape he desires in whatever form would suit his purpose best at any given time. There may be times when lesser gods can assume the shapes of animals or trees or even rocks and boulders, but the reason why the lesser gods more often take human forms is because we could understand better when they communicate with us. I'll read this last part. So my instructor proceeded to explain that while these masks and carvings serve their purpose to instruct children and the common people, I, as a chosen one, must know more about our actual concept of God. I cannot repeat his actual words as it would occupy far too much space, and he explained everything in a symbolism which many of my readers would fail to comprehend. Briefly, he compared the universe with a gigantic anthill. The structure as a whole is God in us, and everything we see about us is merely the ants and the sand grains inside the anthill. So I heard someone come in, and that was my last of that particular citation. So hold on one second. I want to welcome how you say this, Schneider, or
it's me. I was signed out. I don't know. I was signed out.
Oh, okay. Well, it still has you here.
Is that so?
Mine, yeah, it still has you on.
Oh, That's funny. Because I was signing out and
I can remove it.
Yes, remove that. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Kick roasted. Yeah, kick guest. Alrighty. I'm sorry. So I don't know how much you to hear.
No,
It was
I
I was
had
reading.
I had
But what is your response? Or first, hold on before you go, Sister Mika. What is your response?
Well, I think it's just a story. So it's human, men, they make up stuff. So that's what I got on it. To me, it's just a story.
So what do you believe, sister? What do you believe?
What do I believe? That's the problem with belief, because you have to believe something to make it real. I don't go on belief.
What do you go on?
I go on what it is, what reality is.
But you must have a concept of some belief or something. Reality must be based on something, right?
I mean, you don't have to have a concept of it. Just take it of what it is what it is, and nothing's spooky or special about it. That's how I feel, because there's no proof of anything. You could say something, but you can't even prove it. But you will believe it just to make it real.
But the absence of proof doesn't mean something doesn't exist.
Yes. Okay. Wait a minute. So, okay, can you prove a spirit?
I cannot prove that a unicorn exists, but it might be somewhere. I don't even know if you exist.
I mean, you talking to me, so you know
exactly.
I exist.
I know you because I know you exist because I'm talking to you now. But just 1 hour, 2, 3 hours ago, I didn't know if you exist.
Of course, because you didn't know me. You have to know me. You have to know something to know it exists. And because you don't know it, you don't know that it exists. But you would rather believe it to make it real. That's what I'm saying.
But what he's saying is that prior to interacting with you, he had no concept. But even still, like you can know, you can imply the existence of something, even though you have no it's not in your sight, for example. So for example, like if I see a planet wobbling in its orbit funny, I know that there's another planet nearby because it's affecting its gravity.
Okay, but you heard what you just said? You know.
But I can't show, like it's even if I said I believe, I'll say I believe that there's another, because that's the hypothesis. I believe that there's another planetary entity of at least this size to affect the gravity of the orbit of whatever that I can see. So this is how they knew about the Sirius B and things, because of the gravitational lensing. They had no proof that in terms of a visual, like we've detected this, but we know something is there because of how other things are interacting with it. So this is what you got to understand about the concept of spirit and things, because what they're saying is that we know we can't see exactly what it is, but we're definitely interacting with something, and we're going to call that spirit unless proven otherwise.
We know that the galaxies are moving away from each other. The galaxies are moving away from each other, but we know something is pushing them, even though we cannot see it. But we know they are moving. Therefore, something is pushing them. Because we cannot see the dark matter, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Like gravity.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't see gravity, but you know that you interact with gravity, because you have to ask the question, well, what is it that's holding me to the center of this planet, this planet.
Yeah.
You know,
What nothing? What is nothing in the first place? What is nothing?
nothing is nothing. Well, I have a concept for nothing as well, and nothing exists, even though is oxymoronic to even say that in a sentence, right? Because from the perspective that God is existence, right? Everything has its duality. There's no up without down. There's no over
Yeah,
there without over here. So the fact that something exists, its opposite is nothing, which of course does not exist. But nothing is going to sound funny, but I hope it makes sense. Nothing is all around us.
Yes, but the fact that we know that it is there, it means it is not nothing.
But that's what I'm saying. It's nothing. See, this is the shortcoming of language, because nothing exists, but it is not an existence of something.
Yeah. So if it's
Right?
not there, how do you know that nothing exists? Because
also,
you know,
something has to exist.
I
If you know
think,
that it's nothing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yes, I think our way of talking has so much impact into how we understand life. Our languages has a huge impact into how we understand life, and most of the time we're running short of weights that we can use in defining or explaining certain things, and due the lack of that, we think certain things are not there, or we end up seeing certain things as what we see, and we think what we see is only that what we see, and what we don't see is that which doesn't exist, of which is led by our senses in most cases, and our thoughts and understanding of the world and life is formulated by our language. The richer the language, the richer the thought, and that leads to a higher wisdom of some sort. But more so when going back to Credo Mutua instructor is actually defining God as everything and everything, of which is what anyone arrive at when they try to find answers of what is God. And it is true what the instructor is saying, according to my understanding, that everything from where the universe, where it ends, if there is the end and the beginning, that which forms the beginning and the end of the universe, it's all God
Yes,
manifesting into all that is. You see that? So that is what the instructor is trying to say, that you
exactly.
were
But
reading there.
that's why I said that it's hard for me to answer that question regarding a creator. And because
Yeah.
when you say creator, there you're also saying a creation. But living in the West, I understand the way that they use it, because they're trying to argue against evolution. And the
Yeah.
African context is evolution is always being in the process of becoming. It's never a
Mm.
static existence. It's always becoming something, right? Um, and hold on just for 1 second. I want to give a shout out to Rakim77. Thank you for the Cash App donation, and to Brother Kansu for his super chat and donation to the channel. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you both. All righty.
Oh,
And
thank you for that donation. Thanks.
And for those of you who have not just yet, I'm going to need each and every one of you to that is right. Make sure that you hit the like button and you share this conversation with friends and colleagues. Alrighty, I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, as the other thing that may help one to actually open up other understandings in another realm is when you ask yourself questions that really talks to you. For example, when you say, how do I understand or know that I am alive or I am awake or I am existing? How do I know that? I know most of us will say it's because I can touch myself, I can feel myself. Yes, when you are asleep, sometimes you can't hear yourself, you can't touch yourself. Most of your senses are not there, but are you still existing? Yes, you are existing, but asleep. So, who is actually asleep? But more so, when you ask yourself such questions, you get to arrive to a point where you start realizing that everything comes from possibility. There is this thing that formed everything, and that thing is called possibility. And possibility to other people, we may say it's energy, we may say it's the spirit, but whatever that makes things possible is the real thing that brings everything into existence, and that is the possibility that we came from. And at the same time is what makes me and you to be aware that we are alive, we are existing, we are aware of ourselves, is the possibility that we are aware that we are alive, we are awake. That possibility is the ultimate thing that we can say makes the entire universe to be what it is. But more so when we're talking of belief and other things, I think we may have a contradiction of philosophies, and most of the time philosophies are just to unpack and pack things. But it's when we say we believe or we don't believe certain things that get to be supported or empowered by our language. And the more richer the language, the more we can make sense of what is a belief or what is not a belief. But philosophies will tell you the truth that you believe what you actually telling your mind to accept as something that is, of which is not. That is what the belief from philosophical explanation you can get. But more so, I think when we're talking about what makes us to feel that we are alive and what should makes human being to live life into the fullest, you have said something like that when I just came in here, that what makes us to be more bound to be more alive, it's the possibilities of the desire of unfolding the unknown, the desire of reaching the unknown all the time. That is what makes us to be more of human. Yeah, I just want to stop it there. But before I leave, Asa, I like you to give me your communication line, because I've been trying to get hold of you via emails. I could not actually get hold of you. I just want to talk to you regarding the Magua people in the United States there. I don't know how we can maybe devise a plan of grouping them, but I like communication.
This is my email. I did get that communication, and I do apologize. I don't know what was going on, but I have not been quick to responding. But this is my email address here, info@asarimhotep.com. So I'm gonna go through that, and I thought I looked at it because it was on. See, this is why I don't like looking at emails on my phone, because I never answer on my phone. I just look and see, and I say I'm gonna come back later and respond. And because I hate typing with my thumb, it's too big for the screen. But so I'm gonna come back and answer it. I'm gonna find it. But I do remember that.
Just let me get the screenshot of this. I will definitely be quick here. Okay, thank you, Asa. You can continue now.
No problem. I want to and I'm gonna leave that up there again because I know y'all gonna ask me for this dang book. And so if you want the book, just email me at this address and type in, African Philosophy Reader ebook, and I'll send it to you. But with that being said, I recommend this text, The African Philosophy Reader, second edition, edited by P.H. Coetzee and A.P.J. Rue. And there's an author by the name of, let me see, because there's several. Let me go to the table of contents. I don't know why I never like going to the table of contents. Okay, let me go here. Let me type in. Let me do a search real quick, because here we go. So there is. Oh, y'all familiar with Magobe B. Ramose or Ramos? I'm assuming this was Ramose. Being Ramose, it sounds like he's from
Mogobe.
Yeah, somewhere in Southeast Africa. But he has a lot of articles in text dealing with the philosophy of Ubuntu and Ubuntu as philosophy. So this is just one of them. And so I'm trying to, you'll see him articulating these concepts of being. And hold on, let me see. I'm trying to like this, like he's defining Ubuntu, right? But he's using this concept of being and existence, right? So I don't know how clear it will show up on the screen here, but I'll try to highlight as much as possible. So this is what I want to this, I'll just highlight this. Okay, get off the. All right. So it says, it is best, talking about philosophy in Ubuntu. It is best philosophically to approach this term as a hyphenated word, namely Ubuntu. Ubuntu is actually two words in one. It consists of the prefix ubu and the stem into. Ubu evokes the idea of being in general. It is enfolded being before it manifests itself in the concrete form or mode of existence of a particular entity. Ubu, as an enfolded being, is always oriented towards unfoldment, that is, incessant, continual, concrete manifestation through particular forms and modes of being. In this sense, Ubu is always oriented towards into. At the ontological level, there is no strict and literal separation and division between Ubun and into. And Ubuntu, Ubu and into are not two radically separate and irreconcilably opposed realities. On the contrary, they are mutually founding in the sense that they are two aspects of being as a oneness and an indivisible wholeness. Accordingly, Ubuntu is the fundamental ontological and epistemological category in the African thought of the Bantu-speaking people. It is the indivisible oneness and wholeness of ontology and epistemology. Ubu, as a generalized understanding of being, may be said to be distinctly ontological, whereas into, as the nodal point at which being assumes concrete form, or a mode of being in the process of continual unfoldment, may be said to be the distinctly epistemological. That's not that's related to what I'm trying to find, but I'm stressing this notion of always it's a continual being, but he says it in a particular way that I'm gonna try to find, right? Let's see. Thus, the affirmation and negation of Ubuntu, although is a metaphor for ethical, social, and legal judgment. No, this affirmation, okay. Against the fragmentation of Ubuntu. So, feeding upon this putative ontological variety, the elucidation unfolds in the positing of the noun as the source of all activity. This places the doer, the noun, or the subject in the position of molding and ordering being. Nope. Being and becoming are not opposed to one another. They express two related aspects of reality. I guess he's kind of saying it fragmentally in different parts, but you can see that being is in a constant. The way what we were at, like it being become more, because it's a particular quote I'm looking for where he's talking about motion, right? Matter of fact, let me just, because that's why I have slideshows, because I know. So it's probably it's only one there, so nope. There we go. This is what I was looking for. So it's on page 380 of the specific text I'm looking for. So yeah, I was far from. But anyway, so we'll go to the slideshow. So it's in that text that I just showed y'all, right? So Ubuntu as philosophy says, so African philosophy is consistent with the philosophic position that motion is the principle of being. According to this understanding, the condition of being with regard to every entity means that to be is to be in the condition of ness. Whatever is perceived as a whole is always a wholeness in the sense that it exists and persists towards that which is yet to be. Because this is the characteristic of every existing entity, being is to be understood always as a wholeness, right? And remember that he was talking about this unfoldingness. You find that in the Congo, and if you read Fukiao's text, you know, he shows you the Dekinga cosmogram, which this is a representation of, and you'll see that existing is always an unfolding, following the path of the sun in the Bakongo tradition, right? Exactly. So that's why that's what's different between what I'm seeing in Bantu philosophy and cosmology and epistemology is that there's never a time of staticness.
Yeah, like a grandfather,
Like it's always. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
A great grandfather, a grandfather, your father, your brother, your sisters. They produce. They keep going and going, going and going. It's a continuation.
Yes, with something changing, you know, all the time. It's always. You're always a snapshot. So, for example, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
3.
Are you the oldest, or where do you fall?
Yes, I am. I'm the oldest.
All righty. So, your parents, when you were born, and in the early parts of raising you, were different than the parents that gave birth to the 3rd child. Now, how far apart are y'all?
About 2-3 years.
Okay, so y'all close in age. So like with me, I have 4 other brothers and I'm the eldest. But the ages from myself to the youngest is 12 years.
Wow.
So my parents when I was born and they were, you know, in those beginning stages of raising me were totally different than when my youngest was born. Because now they got some experience under their belt, and you know, so they're not. So we look at them as static from our perspective of just knowing them. But you know, like that's why you say you would have never let me get away with what he or she got away with, because your parents aren't the same. So they are evolving as people. Is never a static thing. Is like our religion is evolution, motion. So that's what Ramose is saying, is that being is always moving towards something. It's an unfolding and an evolving state. You can never capsulate it, so like and he goes on to state that into, when you say into, it is a being at a specific point in time, but that being is going to change when you observe it in the future.
Interesting.
Or reflect on it in the past, right? And that's the essence. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so just have different emotions, different way to see it, different pictures. It is metamorphosing into different things, but it is always on the move. That brings it to just sum up the whole concept of Ubuntu, which basically comes down to us. It's not just one part. There are many parts that are moving together.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
yes, go ahead.
I like to come into this concept of Ubuntu. This concept is being philosophized in many ways by many people who actually want to use philosophy in defining whatever that can make sense in life. Ubuntu, let's start with the definition of this word first. This U is a prefix. We find this prefix in the languages of many people in Africa. When I say ukugula, I mean the situation of illness. I mean the illness. It's a prefix like when you say the car, the house. That prefix is pointing out something, a condition, is pointing out a condition. Then follows the B. A B is a name. It's a U is a prefix, then BA is a name, Ba. Ba in Zulu and Sesotho, because South Africans are more, South African languages are more in, it's either it's Nguni or Sotho.
Excuse me, brother. 1 second, brother. Excuse me. Brother, Imhotep. Sorry, I have to go, but I'll catch you up on your email, please. And I would like to join again some other time. Need to go.
No problem.
Early morning. All right, brother.
I understand.
All right, you guys have
be easy. Thank you for joining.
You're welcome.
Yeah. When we come to the Ba, it means two things. Things that are joined, things that are put together. It's we can talk of two cells coming together. It's a Ba. So when two atoms come together, that thing we call it Ba. When we call it a plural of something, it's either in Nguni language or in Sotho language, you will find this Ba. Ba two, it means many or more than one, two upwards. The joint of things, but it's always referred to people, not to animals. You cannot find the Ba when we talk of animals. We can find the Ba when we talk of humans. Bapedi, it means people of Pedi. Bazulu, it means people of Zulu. Tswana, it means people of Tswana. So Ba, it means plural. It's more applied on plural forms of identifying people. And then Ntu. This Ntu, you find it in Nguni language and also in Sotho language. Ntu, it means something. Ntwe. Lento. It means thing. It means thing. Nto. Ntu. It means thing. This thing. It means thing. So when we now come into combining all of these things, U, B, and Ntu is going to give us Ubuntu or Botu or Batu. You see that? But when we maybe try to define everything in its pieces, it means the prefix of pointing out a condition. Ugukula, ugukijima. Ugukijima, it means running. Uguhlala. Ubumnandi. Ubumnandi, it means entertainment. or something delicious, you point out a certain condition. When you say u in Nguni language, and then when you come to ba, it's more of plural from two upwards, the combination of two things upwards. Then ntu, it means nto, into, it means something. Then we put all of this together, we find this thing called a pointing out of a situation of two things that exist. Ubuntu. Ba, it means two or plural. Then nto, it means things. So the philosophy missed this opportunity of defining this word first. They went into the concept of how they want to use it in making sense, rather than to explain the U, BA or BU, and then NTU, NTU. You see that? So I think they've missed that part. But more so now, as I've explained, that it's a pointing out of plural or two things. Two things. You see that? Two things, it means two upwards. Things that are many. Ntu, dinto, izinto. All right, let's now go into the utilization, the concept of Ubuntu. The concept of Ubuntu, when we look into it in this way, that how do we apply Ubuntu in life? We come together as a society. We live together. You and me, you and I, we are two. And if we go into everything that exists in a human body, is into two. We got two eyes, we got two nose, we got two jaws, the upper jaw and the lower jaw, we got two lips. It's into two. The bar comes from there. Things that exist into two. And then the upper jaw cannot exist or cannot function without the lower jaw. That's where the concept of Ubuntu comes in. The one eye cannot exist without the other eye. Of course, you can be blind, but the concept of having two eyes is to make sure that those eyes support each other. The concept of having two lips is to make sure that these two lips, when together, they make sound. The concept of having two fingers is to make sure that you grip, you manage to grip certain things. The concept of having two legs is to make sure that you walk instead of limping. You see that? So you and I, we are bar, we are bar, we are two cells bound together to form something that functions. And for these two things to function, they have to be united and they have to be in understanding of each other's roles. So that's where the concept of Ubuntu starts now. I have to understand my role in your life, and you have to understand my role in my life. And when we understand that and put it together, we become Bantu. We become many, and we continue making things work through the rule that I bring in your life and the rule that you bring in my life. That is Ubuntu now. That's where Ubuntu starts. You cannot exist alone and make progress in life without the other cell. You need these two cells to come together to form something of life, to form something that will come into existence. That is where life starts in the concept of Ubuntu. And then when Ubuntu starts operating is because people come together, like for example, a man and a woman come together to form a new life, to form a baby, to create, to procreate, for example. That is now the other concept of defining what is Ubuntu. The coming together of two things that form something that generate life, that perpetuate life, that makes life to be more. And that is what we are as humans. That is what we are as plants. That is what we are in our livelihood as plants, in the ecosystem, as everything. We have to know how to come together. We have to understand our role, and we have to know that everything that exists is there to support me, and I am there to support it. Dying, for example, is not death, that you no longer exist. You die because you're going to feed something, you're going to make something to come into life. That is what death is. There is no death. You're only going to support another life to come into existence. That is Ubuntu. And Ubuntu now comes to a state where we understand that we're building a community. We're building a nation out of coming together, joining forces of our roles in generating something that will make life livable. That is the concept of Ubuntu now. Yeah, let me stop there for now.
Yeah. So, do you believe in the afterlife? To the guy that was,
not per se, I believe in afterlife. There is no afterlife. Everything is life. There's no afterlife. Even
so
though
after you die, where you think you go?
I actually get converted into something, because the real me doesn't die. The spirit doesn't die. The energy that generated the spirit that generated this flesh, bone, and whatever doesn't die. It is still there. It remains in its form. But what gets converted is the flesh, bone, and whatever gets converted into feeding other organisms to come into life. And those organisms has to perform certain activities that serves lives as well. You see that? There are certain organisms that has to be fed to come into existence, or has to be fertilized by my flesh to come into existence so that life can continue. You see that? So I just get converted into feeding other organisms, but the real me is there.
I don't understand when you
I'll
said.
say the spirit. Yeah. The spirit
I
is
don't
still
understand.
there.
Would there where?
It is there. The
There's
spirit,
no,
the spirit, it is still there where it was before the flesh emanated in a womb. Before the flesh get formulated in a womb in a form of a futile. The spirit is still there to formulate whatever that needs to be formulated out of the mandate of that spirit. You see that? The flesh that you think is dead, it is only converted into something that is required for other lives to perform certain activities in life.
now I think what
I'm not sure if
she's, well, you got to understand, she may not understand this, and so I could be mansplaining, as they would say here in the West. But this is, she's having a hard time conceptualizing fundamentally what you're saying, because she grew up within a biblical religious context. And as a result, even though she may not practice that particular spiritual tradition, because it was embedded so early, it shapes how she understands these fundamental philosophical concepts, and it shapes the way that she asks her questions. So it's like
oh,
when
yes,
somebody
yes.
asks, it's like when somebody asks you, what faith are you, right? Now they themselves may no longer
Oh,
be
yes, I understand.
Christian or Arab, but because that frame of thinking was so instrumental into their development, that they're still kind of trapped in a what we call an epistemological trap of asking questions that only make sense within a Christian or I should say more so an Abrahamic religious context. So
Yeah, I
what
think
he's saying,
that, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think
No,
that template, the template of which he actually trying to place his thoughts of understanding life, it's a template that might maybe hinder his understanding to reach the dimension where he actually established a level of understanding life without a template coming from a certain point of view.
mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why, like, to understand the nature of his answer, Sister Mika, he would have to be able to provide some relatable answers. So, for example, you went to high school, did you not, Sister Mika?
Yes.
You graduated from high school, and then you went into college or went into nursing school, whatever you did, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's easier for you to understand that, you know, you had an existence and a development within high school, but then you had this experience where you matriculated, as they say, but essentially you died as a high school student, but you still moved on to higher learning, still on Earth. You didn't hop to Mars or to Andromeda Galaxy once you graduated. You still existed within the environment, which is what we call in English the earth, right? So what he's essentially saying is that, because you got to understand it from the general African perspective, that existence is an infinity. There's only different rooms inside the great mansion of reality. So, but some rooms you go to, you have to change form, right? So when the sperm came out of your father and landed in your mother's womb, and the eggs became a zygote, you know, in order for you to exist in that environment, you had to come in a liquidy form, small, and then you developed over time and you came out of the womb as a baby. But in order for you to get to high school, you can't be a baby, you had to change form. Now, in order for the energy, and this is where, you know, now I can get back on my academicness. What is clear to me is that spirit is just a word for motion. That force that causes motion, that is motion. And I have linguistic reasons for arguing that. And a good book from at least one perspective that you can read is the Dogon's perspective in the Pale Fox text, written by Marcel Griot. And so that motion, that's the true soul. The soul is just the forces, the motion that churns up all of the atoms to take a shape. Once the life, quote unquote, ends, the motion moves back into the plane. Because everything in the universe, as we understand it, really derives from planes, or what we should say, fields. So like you have a Higgs boson, you have a Higgs field. You have a proton, you have the, you know, that particular field. You have the electromagnetic force and fields. So all particles that you see are just agitations, the motions from fields. And this is exactly what you see in ancient Kemet. Matter of fact, there's some conversation coming out of South Africa along those same lines, that was recorded in the early 1900s. It's motion, like a spirit is a motion, you know, and so that motion is something that is not tangible, but it's something you can recognize and see, but only through objects, because only objects can move. But there's a force, a spin, like everything spins. That's that principle of life, it spins. So you'll see in Dogon and Bakongo, specifically, they articulate this using spiral symbols. But when you go into ancient Kemet, of course, they just got to be all elaborate. You may see it represented as a dung beetle, or you may see it as, let me see if I can pull up something here. Let me go back and pull up what is it? So do I have, okay, here. So I'm gonna share my screen again. It looks like He left. I need to plug in my phone. So let me put that down for a sec. And so let's just go here. So let me make sure that everything is on the up and up here. Right. So this is from the tomb of Ramesses VI. And this is an actual photo of the tomb. And the way that they articulate, so we're going to look at this section here. And this is from the book that this is, hold on, the book is this, but it's referencing this real tomb, but the pages are in black and white. And so you can see the god Atum here coming out of the spin, creating the stars and other celestial beings and planets or whatnot. Here's a different angle, but here's a more drawn photo. So out of the Nun, the plains, the fields, comes this spin, and life happens. And I argue in another text that spirit is spin, and I'm hoping that, let me see. So I was talking about how evolution is the thing, and the way that they articulate it is in terms of this spin is from this dung beetle. And this is a real dung beetle rolling up the ball of dung, but this is the personified representation. And so the saint is moving the sun. But everything spirit has to deal with motion, change and evolution. And this is, for example, Bibile metamorphosis. That's a word in the Dogon language of the pole of the seed. And so this is supposed to be a representation of man. And man from a spiral evolution, the pre-configuration of the human beings according to the Dogon. In Chiluba, they would say Bwanda, thread or to spin. But you can see this is a symbolic representation of the unfolding of a spin into the human being. And so I don't go through it all here, but this is one I can't find. And it's a slide. I don't know, it may not be on. Yeah, I may have it in another. Yeah, I gotta find it. But it's a specific one that I'm looking for regarding the Dogon concept of spin. Let's see if I can. That's a short one. These are pretty much the same slides. See, okay, so I'll read this one and then I'll end, because this it articulates. See, what was that? So here's another example. So as the universe is God Amma's creation, indeed is Amma. It is sacred with all it contains, from the infinitesimal to the infinite. So this is another citation where the Dogon is showing that for them, God is existence itself. It's the universe. So when you say universe or God, it's the same thing. And this is Dr. Alexis Bekiani Tingon that I mentioned earlier, the Dagger. So his book is Of Life and Health, the Language of Art and Religion in an African Medical System. Right. But I want to get to, just trying to make sure that, why don't I have that citation? I need to put it in there. This Dogon citation. So anyway, and we'll end the show soon. So there's a text, the sayings of the ancient one, the unique restatement of the ageless wisdom by P.G. Bowen. And so as I state here, in August of 1927, an article was published in the Theosophist, and that's that Madame Blavatsky and stuff like that, right? An esoteric theosophy magazine written by Captain P.G. Bowen, an Irishman, titled The Ancient Wisdom of Africa. In this account, he recalls his interactions with a Zulu brotherhood called the Bonabakulu Abasi Kimu, the Brotherhood of the Higher Ones of Kemet, Egypt, where they began to teach him some of the wisdom of their traditions. At one point, he was under the guidance of Mandhalanga, or Madhlalanga, the strength of the sun, who instructed him, and Langa is the word for sun, or Alanga, word for sun, who instructed him on the nature of the creator, who the Zulu called the Itongo, right? So what I want to put here is what he was. So again, this is an Irishman who in like 1911 or between 1911 and 1919 or whatnot, was stationed in South Africa, and he befriended some, it appears to be Berbers who traveled to South Africa, but who themselves were initiated into an African wisdom center and wisdom tradition. And so the Berber, who was himself initiated under the Zulus, is giving him the Zulu lore, right, of that time. So the teacher is teaching him, P.G. Bowen, about the Zulu concept of existence and creation and cosmology and the nature of God, right? So he says in the text, understanding of what occurred is best gained by the following conception. Think of the cosmos just before individuality began as a vast amorphous ocean of mind and matter. Its surface ripples and upper reaches those planes of mind which touch on spirit, growing denser and denser downward till matter in etheric form is reached. Downward till ether becomes gas, which may be likened to the mineral charged lower strata of the ocean. Downward till gases become liquids, muddy water, finally into solids, thick mud. The beginning of individuality in this cosmic ocean may be likened to the starting of myriads of tiny whirlpools, under the force of a growing tide, extended deeper and deeper till at last all strata were involved in the swirl. Thus, we have individuality set up extending from spiritual mind to the physical plane. The whirlpool on the surface represents the birth of the soul. So this is what I'm telling you, like what he's articulating here, I know it is a fact in terms of the underlying philosophy across Africa, because I have other texts from other wisdom traditions that don't interact with each other that say this exact same thing. So this is what you're talking about, spirit or a soul, so to speak. You're talking about the motion, the force of life itself, right? So the birth of the soul is the process of the stirring up of the matter. It's the like if if you can imagine like the inside, like there's a tornado spinning inside you, that would be your soul. It's the motion that keeps you alive. So when you die, that vital force, that motion dissipates and comes back into the ocean, the field, the plain. Its extension to the muddy depths represents the soul's descent into matter. In matter, the soul has reached a phyllion of its cycle, and now it begins its long, slow return journey. By the process of evolution, it climbs slowly upward from mineral to plant, from plant to animal, from animal to man, through all grades and states of human development, shaking off slowly and painfully as it climbs. The gross accretions gathered during its descent up. And this is actually verified in terms of the I'm trying to see if Cradle Mutoirs, do I have it on this slideshow? Right. Because he goes, no. See, I don't think I've ever done this lecture on my channel.
You were supposed to do it. You didn't do it.
Yeah, I did do it. So I'm giving y'all a preview. So now I gotta do it. Because I did it for a conference and it was a short version, and I meant to do a long version. So I have Cradle Mutual up there. However, I don't have that particular slide, because there's a slide that he shows in this book of the Zulu's concept of the transmigration of the soul, and it matches P.G. Bowen's to a T. Right. So I'm definitely going to come back and revisit this, but I want to finish that because there was a second part. So he continues: the sources of the brother's power. Of the source of power we will, the pupil can learn but little until he attains discipleship. But let him ponder this much: I have likened individuality to whirlpools in the cosmic ocean, but all that ocean has not been cast into individuality. Between the whirlpools, myriad though they be, stretch wide, smooth spaces, identical with them in composition. Now it can be well conceived that a whirlpool, by setting up minor vibrations within itself, may send out ripples through the smooth spaces, which will strike upon and affect in some degree other whirlpools. All whirlpools are constantly doing this. Now, suppose a whirlpool, in quotations, to have gained power to control its internal vibrations and to send them pulsating through the ocean towards whatever objective it desires. Can you not see that it may produce upon that objective whatever effect it desires? Now, think of the whirlpool as being a man. Is it not clear that by getting full control of the vibrations of the higher planes, he may dispatch through the cosmic ocean, of which is part in the ripples of various kinds? I'll skip all of that. But I wanted to show you that the whirlpool is a man. So when we go, so this what I use to explain what they call in quantum mechanics quantum entanglement. So this is published way before any concept of quantum entanglement, right? So I want to go back for a second. I may have passed it up. Right. Where was that? Let me see. Back to the Dogon. So what did we learn from the Dogon? This is a spinning, of course it's 2D, so it's not 3D and in motion, but this is their sign and symbol for the spiral evolution in the pre-configuration of the human beings according to the Dogon. So this process is the cognate word for Kepper without the k prefix. It's a partial reduplication. It's supposed to be bile, but they say bibile, which means metamorphosis, evolution, change. And that process of spin is what is the pre-configuration of man, just like what you see in the Zulu. So this is how you reinforce and double check concepts to say that something is African or not, because you'll see the same ideas pop up in very creative ways in various different African wisdom traditions, right? But I'll end it there because we'll be here all night. And we ain't heard from Mancoma. He done fell asleep on us.
That's what I said. He said one little word and we're going.
He fell asleep at the job. Oh well. But do you have any last words or questions?
Well, what I learned from Spirit and Soul is, to me, it's just mostly based on religious aspect. So it's, I don't know. I think yeah, it's a man concept, and I think everything is in your brain, and we're trying to figure it out, and we make stories about it. So I'm just stuck on that. I can't. Yeah, I can't. I can't with the other stuff, and it's still a belief. But anyway.
Yeah, it's layers and it's levels to the articulation of the concept. But one of the things I want to emphasize for the audience is that the best strategy is to understand as best as possible the concept within a particular culture first, and keep them, and don't try to blend them, because you'll see, like, if you try to force them all together, it'll seem contradictory, these particular concepts. But once you've laid them out into their separate articulations in different pages, then you can read over them again to see the patterns and the differences, the similarities and the differences between the concepts. And then when you truly understand these things, then things begin to make sense. Because there was a citation I was looking for, but I don't have it on any of the slides that I pulled up, but I have it on one where Credo Mutwa is talking about initiation, his initiation. And he's the elders are telling him that, what we say to you is one thing. What we tell the general public is another. Because what we tell them, we have to put it in a way that their minds can digest. But it's for you, Credo Mutwa, it's almost like the Jesus story. So remember when Jesus was speaking to the multitude, and he was speaking to them in parables, and then after they dissipated, the disciples asked Jesus, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" And he said, "It's for you," meaning the disciples, "to know the secrets of the kingdom of the heaven. To them I speak parables." And it's the same thing that the elders were telling Credo Mutwa, but they were a little bit more harsh. They was like, the general public basically are stupid. So we gotta create mythologies. We have to create, signs and symbols and personify things, because at this level of abstraction, it's just like when you speak to a math professor, right? And matter of fact, I can cite this, right?
Yeah, but how you saying it still remind me of how to me it got a connection. They all seem similar. It's because you're using a different story, trying to make it different, but it's still the same thing.
Not necessarily, because again, you have to understand that each one of these stories and things are spoken in an individual African language. And sometimes that's why I say you got to be careful, and you have to put your scholar hat on, your researcher hat on, because when you try to translate certain things into in English language, for example, or French, many times can be lost, and you may be using words that don't have a necessary direct equivalent in the original language when trying to translate it into English, for example. Right? So this will be my last thing. So this is Dr. Sylvester James Gates. He's a theoretical physicist who got his PhD at MIT. And he wrote 2 articles. You know, one is the more scientific-y article, and then this was the layperson's article. And so there's a physics world, it's the symbols of power, adinkaras, and the nature of reality. And brilliant man. And matter of fact, I'm going to have him on the show sometime in 2025. We tried to set it up in 24. He's agreed, but it was a scheduling in certain things. So we're going to try again and set a specific date, and we'll have him on the program. But anyway, there's a lecture of his titled Just Symposium Keynote Address. And, you know, Sussy, this is short for supersymmetry, and the Lords of the Ring. And towards the beginning of the question and answer period, Dr. Gates says the following words. So this is my typing of what he said. So this is not a text that he's written. He's answering a question in the audience from this lecture. So he says, this is what we call vertex normalization in quantum theory. And what it basically says is that the charge that an electron couples to a photon with actually depends on things such as the speed and the spin, the location, much more complicated than the equation we taught our students in high school. You see, we constantly lie when we teach science, but we lie in the service of truth. We tell people the part of the truth that is appropriate for what they have as a background. It would make no sense for me to walk into a high school classroom and try to teach my students relativistic quantum field theory. So I say instead, Coulomb's law is the end of the story. Even though I know that it is not the complete accurate story, but it's good enough for that audience. So when you talk to a scientist, you need to be very careful if you're not a scientist, because you need to know what the scientist is assuming about what you know, because that influences what we tell you. And we always got to keep that in mind. So this is why when the elder was telling Credo Mutoa, all these carved concepts of the form of God are only a means of satisfying the common rabble, meaning the common idiot in the community, which cannot be made to worship any God unless that God has a shape that they can more or less understand and hold in the mind. So when you see all of these gods and goddesses and stuff like that in African tradition, they're only used as pedagogical tools to teach more abstract concepts. And the deeper and richer you get into the teachings, the more abstract and fundamental the teachings get. And so what this is why when Jesus talks to the disciples, to them I speak in parables, because that's what they can digest. It's for you, the disciples, those of the discipline, to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. And that's exactly what is going on in this thing. So, for example, when we interviewed Dr. Tangon, and remember, and so when you go to the lecture on my channel and you type him up, go to 18 minutes and 40 seconds, he's going to say the following. He says, Dagara religion is all about the cosmos, the cosmic force, the cosmic energy. Cosmos equals everything that is together, what is on earth and what is not on earth. You need to know and interact with this cosmos. Whatever you do, practically, to get to know the cosmos, you do it in the form of deity, the form of God, the form of divinity. You give it a personality using one of the forces. So you personify these abstract forces that people can't see, these fundamental laws of nature, these fundamental forces and interactions. You personify them so that they're more easily digestible when you're trying to translate that information. But once you get among experts, you can dispense with all the deity talk and just speak about force. Just like what a physicist does, just like what Dr. Gates spoke of earlier. So these are the things that we got to keep in mind. So there's nuance to these conversations that that we must be aware of, and we can't. You read some myth in a text somewhere that you understand what's going on. That's why you got to study the language, and you got to be sitting at the feet of certain elders, right? You got to be given the tools to be able to what Fukuyama calls the tying and the untying of knotty ropes.
Yeah, I'm trying to sit at the feet of asarimhotep.
I almost said something else. See, you gotta keep trying to keep it clean on this Friday night. But anyway, I do appreciate each and every one of you for listening. You know, don't forget to hit the like button and make sure that you share this video. And if you have any, open forum topics that you think the community can discuss, let me know, and I'll set up a show. We'll go from there. So with that said, I do appreciate every one of you again, and until next time, peace.
Tokyo wanna dose that. What's up? Feeling like I dropped the draw for and caught Uno. Came to kick the door with the game man judo. Pin game low, that's why they give me kudos. Inspired by the 3-0. 595, check it for pack light. Hit the turnpike, slide to a baseline. Gotta sound like I just hit the 85. Oh, I'm so ready. By enemies necessary, we gon' be legendary. Hold up. About to grow the payrolls. If you see the vision and you're with it, you should say so. Cause we about building, elevating the millions.
This program was created with the love and support of all our Patreon members and subscribers. If you are not a member yet and would like to see more content like this, consider becoming a member today. The link is in the description of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated.